we are going to start with our business to business panel. I'm just gonna say everyone's names, and then I'm gonna have Monica, Kim, and Elizabeth just talk about their business for a minute or two to tell us what they're all about, and then Chelsea and I are going to present questions. And then anybody attending, drop your question in the chat, and then we can present it to the group and get some answers for you. So this is just kind of, more casual. We'll ask questions, give us answers, more organic answers. We'll go from there. So let's do, Monica, why don't you start off? Tell us what you're doing and everything like that.
Thanks, Holly. So I'm Monica Charsky, and I own and operate Sweet Tooth Farm. Sometimes we dabble more in the prepared food world, but primarily we focus on produce. We sell at markets, pop-ups, as well as short-term subscription boxes. And with that, we sell a multitude of fresh produce that we grow, as well as honey that we extract from beehives that we keep and tend to. And then also we do baked goods that are allowed for the market regulations, right? So I don't do any enriched things, anything that needs refrigeration, pretty basic stuff. I don't quite get as fancy as I saw Kim on here with her pies or anything like that. But yeah, so we started in 2016. We kind of Leslie Noped a park next to us and grew from there. And yeah, we currently have kind of another small farm, a small woman and queer owned farm kind of incubating with us, working together. So we're we really started because I believe in my heart that fresh food, healthy food shouldn't be a privilege and a luxury item, and that everyone should have access to those things and opportunity to have those things. And so that's why we're pretty dedicated to growing food in our neighborhood in Riverbend, just north of Des Moines, or downtown, excuse me. So we are planning to continue that. It will be slightly different next year. That's kind of the short version.
Okay, great. Thank you, Monica. Kim, why don't you tell us about what you're doing with Domestic Bones?
Hi, guys. I'm Kim. Domestic Bones is my business. There's nothing really straightforward with hand pies. It's all, I make hand pies. How'd you get into that? What is this thing? I've been working retail. I've worked for Whole Foods for the last 15 years since I was a baby, a senior in high school. I moved here with Whole Foods 9 years ago to open the store here. I always knew I wanted my own business. I always knew that it had to involve food. I'm obsessed with food. I always have been. I just never really knew what it was going to be. And, I think with the pandemic and everything, and retail is already a pretty thankless job. And then you throw a pandemic into the mix and it's like, get me the hell out of here. It's just very, very eye-opening to me. What my family needed. I have 2 small kids, and we needed more flexibility, and I needed to be home more, and I needed to be passionate about what I was doing. So I reached out to Megan, who owns Peachtree Brewing, last summer. I had heard her say that she was looking for food for the tap room. I didn't know what that looked like. I thought maybe little side salads, meat and cheese trays. And I met with her and she was like, no, that's not what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Hand pies. So that's kind of how it all started. And the more I thought about it, the more I really loved it. It's like comfort food, which is what I'm all about. High quality food, which is what I'm all about. And fun, just a lot of fun. So I just started making pies by the dozen. And then in February, I started at the Mickle Center in Sherman Hill. So I don't have a home bakery license because I went into it knowing that I was going to use meat. I knew I needed a commercial kitchen space. And so that's the avenue I pursued. I really enjoyed the Mickle Center. I think they're running at capacity now. I know a lot of you are probably looking or in need of commercial kitchen space. And I think the need for that's really growing in Des Moines. It's been a great way to start. It allowed me to, not have a lot of overhead, not have to invest a lot of money, and really just start, grassroots, small, and go at my own pace. So yeah, that's
Okay.
me.
Great. All right, Elizabeth, time to put down the pipe and bag.
I know.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Elizabeth and I own Chacha's Confections. I'm a home-based licensed bakery. I wholesale to several restaurants around Des Moines, and I also work out of Creme Cupcake. I stock their coolers full of cheesecakes and pies and then cookies when they need them. I started this in 2015 because I've worked in restaurants my whole life. And somebody asked me if I could make cheesecakes. So I told them I could, and I never made them. And now 6 years later, I'm still making them, tons of them every day. And let's see, some of the questions. Well, I started out with cheesecakes and cakes and cupcakes, and I've just recently made the decision to get away from cakes and cupcakes and kind of push that business towards Creme Cupcake and other bakers in Des Moines and just focus solely on my cheesecakes and pies and cookies. I do pop-ups at my house about once a month. When COVID hit, a lot of people wanted porch pickup, which really actually turned out being nice because I no longer had to sit around for hours waiting for people to pick up. And then I put a refrigerator outside my front door, which is even nicer because they can swing by any time of the day.
So I want to ask, I'm going to pick one up maybe towards the bottom that I don't think has been answered yet. Let's talk with Kim. You have 2 girls and you work at Whole Foods. What are some things that you do to kind of balance your life and doing the hand pies and selling at Peachtree? And I think you also sell at the Iowa Food Co-op. What are some things you do to kind of help balance everything?
I don't have like an answer for you or anything magical. I will say, I can't like do it all, or I could not do it all. So it started, with the ideas, and then I was still working full time at Whole Foods, up until May. So from January to May, I was only doing monthly pop-ups. That allowed me to, get good at what I was doing and to figure out like what I really wanted and what my goals were and my vision for my business, because I didn't really have any of those things when I started, so that was kind of a good way for me to figure out my direction before I invested too much time, money, or energy into Domestic Bones. And then in May, I went down to part-time at Whole Foods. That's when I started doing the Iowa Food Co-op. So those are bi-weekly orders. And then I thought I was going to do a farmer's market this summer. And like, I'm really actually grateful that didn't work out. I would have gone nuts having to do something every single week. And I'm only now, like in October, I'll be done working at Whole Foods and I'll start to pursue Domestic Bones full time. So for me, it's been a very gradual process. I told myself, when I was full time, like this will only be for a short time. You just need to get this off the ground. You need to figure out what you're doing. This is not forever. Like you can do this for 3 months, 4 months. So I think just like knowing that there was a deadline or, a time frame where I wouldn't have to be so frazzled was very important to me. And then starting small.
Okay, great. Monica, you're in a similar situation. You also have 3 young kids. How do you deal with the daily struggle of that and working with the farm and making breads?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, even though at times it can be a little more difficult, I think it is actually really important as parents to let not only like the public know, but partners and people in business that we have kids and we have obligations and they are part of our lives. And you know what? Sometimes if I have a meeting or we're getting coffee, I have a child with me because I'm a mother and that's my life. And I think to kind of normalize that we don't always have to do it all and have everything locked down, but no, my babies are with me and that is my life and it's the whole package. I think in some ways, being a little bit unapologetic about that normalizes it for a lot of people. But I think also being really intentional about, which is again, more unpaid labor, but you know, strategizing on ways to keep them occupied and busy that they can still feel a part of your business and connected to what you're doing, right? Because obviously everyone on this call is passionate about what they're doing. We're all doing a little bit different things, but we're all really passionate. So, you know, if I'm baking, I usually let the kids make like a disgusting concoction with me, you know, and yes, it's messy and sometimes it is more work, but it lets me also work while they are with me. And similarly to outside on the farm, obviously there are things that I cannot do with them around. I do not ever ride the tractor with them. But you know, I think that like I said, just normalizing that I have small children and I am responsible for them. So they will be with me sometimes, and incorporating activities for them that are age appropriate into what I'm doing, whether that's harvesting or baking. That's kind of what I do. And then also, you know, I'm getting better at this, but drawing some boundaries around stuff that sometimes I'll say, like, I just need to be with my kids. You know, I can't do X, Y, Z, which is, I know, a hard thing.
Oh, it's a good answer. It's important. Elizabeth, anything to add about balancing the work and family life?
It definitely sucks when people complain, like if you have stuff going on with your family and you cannot make their order, like you know, and we try to tell them we're booked or this or that, and you know, sometimes you just have to be outright and let them know, you know, I have a family emergency or I have stuff going on. My kids are all in high school, so they're all a little easier to deal with, somewhat. But it is the balance. You just have to like take the time. Like this year I cut way back, so I'm available for any time that my kids need me to go out to them, go to their games, go to practices. They live an hour away right now, so I definitely I'm learning to take that personal time and push things away so that I can spend time with my family.
All right, good. All right, Chelsea, do you want to ask the next question?
Yes, well, Monica, we're going to start with you on this one. Can you tell us what you're involved in the community, and then also on that, how you handle donation requests? Because those, I know they're separate questions, but they can go hand in hand. Maybe if you could cover kind of your own involvement, and then also if people reach out to you specifically about donating to their organization, or how you balance that out. And then I'd love to hear from Kim and Elizabeth as well on this.
Sure. So, I mean, I would say that we really started because of our community. Years before I ever started Sweet Tooth Farm, I would go and serve breakfast down at Seafoam, which is just 2 blocks down from me. That's Children and Families Urban Movement. They do breakfast, lunch, and dinner like 300 days of the year. And a lot of the conversations that were happening in other families were really different from mine, right? It was much less a question of quality or even variety of foods. It was availability and prices and or desperation, right? And so before I had any of my kids, many children would be in the park that is now our garden. It was essentially a large sand pit, but regardless, I would invite them over to garden with me. And I don't care what neighborhood you're in any corner of the world. If you give a small child a hose, it's over. They're set, they're happy. So lots of times I didn't want to be, just to be frank, I didn't want to be the white lady who asked them to go home at 10 o'clock at night because I had to work in the morning, because that's what it was. But I wanted to be Monica. I wanted to be someone they knew, someone they liked and trusted. And so again, I had a lot of realizations. A lot of the kids would walk to the liquor store, which was our only food option at the time in 2013, and get, Takis and a hot dog for dinner. And so, pardon the pun, but that kind of planted a seed in me in terms of a need. When we finally, after 3 years, got access to the abandoned park to start a garden, there was no trajectory or path to utilizing a side yard lease to grow a commercial garden. There was none in the city of Des Moines. So we worked with the legal department for about 6 months for them to amend and change their side yard lease program so that residents of Des Moines now can garden and sell their vegetables from side yards. So that was kind of our start in this. But I mean, I was a social worker in a past life, so it's not, it's old hat for me. But really most of, or a majority of my kind of advocacy and community involvement has been around food, right? I find food to be something that crosses language, it crosses so many barriers and connects us with each other. And so I've always had options for gleaning. And what that means is that if people come in and do their own labor in terms of harvesting, then they can have vegetables for a reduced cost or for free. We also take EBT, so we take food stamps for our items. Another thing that was kind of sparked when the pandemic hit, CFM had to close their doors. They were not allowed to be in their kitchen space. And so my neighbors and I kind of got together, and for 2 months, we served 100 meals a night, 5 days a week from the church. And a dear friend of mine, Aubrey Alvarez, runs Eat Greater Des Moines. And I remember texting her in like March 2020. I had listened to a podcast about community fridges, and I just was like, Aubrey, if we can cook 100 meals, hot meals a night, gosh, we could do groceries. That's so much easier. And so in December of that year, we started the first community fridge in Iowa. So kind of hearkening back to the Parks Department, we're in a little bit of a black hole. The fridge sits on a space that is still zoned as a park. And so we are in accordance with zoning for a public park to have a refrigerator there and to do food handouts in said park. We've been open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week since December 6th, 2020. I cannot stress enough how much food we move through that. I've seen $600 worth of groceries go in under 30 minutes. We average about 200 visitors a day. So that's kind of just a side extra thing. That's like not even really my business, but that is a big part of how I'm involved with the community. It sits on my property. I maintain it, pay the electricity, and coordinate all the volunteers to do food rescue. In terms of my business and the fridge and donating, I run the fridge. So the person who's making requests is moi. But one thing that we are really working on is creating a model so that people can straight from a sale. So say we're at a market, or we're doing a pop-up, or we're doing a box, we can sell either at a reduced price or similar pricing. We can sell our produce and baked goods for the fridge and have the community pay for it, right? And so that's kind of like a double, right? We're getting paid for our labor, and we're also filling the fridge so that people can take fresh produce home. We're kind of trialing it, calling it mutual aid shares. So if you're buying one, would you be willing to buy another to pay it forward? It's been very successful, and I wish someone would just write me a grant to just put all the food in there. That hasn't happened yet. It's a fine line, right? I'm not a nonprofit. I'm a business, and at an absolute minimum, things need to pay for themselves, right? And so it's a delicate balance to walk, running both things concurrently, but it's something that we think is really important, and we don't have any plans to stop. So, sorry, I think I kind of meandered away from your question there a little bit, Chelsea.
No, I love listening to it. No, that's perfect. I think that's really good perspective, and it's considering that, that they do go hand in hand, your business and and the community fridge, the way that you're involved in the community. Do people specifically ever reach out to you for Sweet Tooth Farm for donations to their organizations? And if so, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, definitely. People do, and it honestly, a big part of it is what time of year are people asking, right? Winters are a lean season for me. I have to rely solely on baking and or classes at that time. I don't have the infrastructure to grow indoors. And so if you catch me in December, you know, I may not have financial capital, but I do have some social capital. And so that's kind of what I rely on. So for example, the young students at Des Moines Public School racial equity team requested lunch for 54 people. And that's a chunk of change, which I couldn't accommodate 55 lunches. So I just crowdsourced it. I put it on my social media and asked if people could donate. And I think within 2 days, we had raised almost $1,000. And so I think just realizing, and I think everyone on this call too, especially as you grow your businesses and you create a community of supporters and people who care about you and care about what you care about, that's also something valuable. And you can, you know, use that social capital for things that you believe in. And yeah, so we were able to buy lunches for everyone and give them like $600 because they're high schoolers. So they were like, Jimmy John's is fine. But that would be my best advice. And also just to not apologize about saying, this is what I need. Right. So like, let's say someone wants a donation or wants me to do something. I can say, yes, I can do X, Y, Z, but for my own business, like I can't do this because I need that. And that's okay sometimes, you know. This is a world of finite resources, and that expands to all of us on this call too. We only have so much in terms of disposable donations to throw around to people, and that's okay. No one of us on this call can solve every issue or donate to every cause, and that's, you know, that's just reality, because we also have to sustain ourselves and our businesses. And I think recognizing that we do what we can with what we have, and not that we give everything and burn ourselves out, is really important to remember.
Great. Kim or Elizabeth, do you guys want to talk at all about your involvement in the community or in donations or how you handle them?
I can speak very briefly about it. Just for me, community involvement looks very different. I'm not really to the place where I'm sourcing many of my ingredients locally. I don't, you know, work with very many charities. I am involved with other businesses. That's my way to be involved in the community. So working at the Mickle Center, there's 26 small businesses that work out of that kitchen. A lot of them I don't know or don't use it on a regular basis, but there's at least a dozen businesses that I see in there regularly. And I feel like as soon as we run into each other, we're like, because it's like somebody who understands what I'm going through. And, you know, so that's been amazing. And then the Iowa Food Co-op, you know, I wasn't a member there before I became a producer, and seeing like how it's this one-stop shop for local, and it's just like a bunch of local food nerds that kind of shop there and support it. I look at it as a true partnership where, you know, yes, you know, they are being paid to sell my product, but I also want people to shop there so they can get my product, you know? So yes, win-win partnership for me at the Iowa Food Co-op. And then Peachtree, you know, they're based out of Knoxville. But just even, you know, I said the other day, I'm like, I know I don't work here, but you guys kind of are like my work family. Like you know, it's really fun to go in there every month and to have met, you know, just people I didn't know before. And then just briefly, the social media aspect and like all these people that I know now and can call friends that I did not know at all in January. That's been very inspirational for me, super encouraging. Yeah.
I love it.
Um,
Elizabeth?
So ways that I would be involved with my community would be like a lot of my customers obviously have young kids. So they are in dance or baseball or child might have an illness or something. I usually will help participate in fundraisers and give them a portion of the proceeds. And then as far as donations go, I try to keep it local to my area. So like if a high school in Northwest Iowa asked me for donations for their gala, I probably would not. First of all, I don't want to drive 4 hours to drop off a donation. I'd rather it be in my community because those people come back and support me or support others that were involved in that as well. So I do a lot with like Lincoln High School, North High School. I do stuff with the Iowa Cops, Survivor Ball, and just stuff like that.
Okay, great.
I
Thanks,
love that.
Elizabeth. We actually had a question in the chat that I'm gonna give to Elizabeth, and then Kim and Monica, if you want to jump in as well. The question is, what do you mean by a month-to-month pop-up? And then I'll expand on that a little bit more. What are some places where you guys like to pop up, or if you do it frequently and things like that?
So far, I do pop-ups only at my house, usually once a month on a Saturday morning. Sometimes during the winter, depending on my schedule, I'll do it on a Sunday. I just put a tent outside my house and people pull up or they walk down the neighborhood and buy treats. I usually don't go to other businesses just because I'm not exactly sure on the requirements for licensing for that. From what I've read, you have to apply for a license every time you pop up at somebody's store. So I don't like to do a whole lot of paperwork, so I'd rather just do it at my house.
Okay, great. It's like a garage sale, but you're just selling dessert. So
Yeah.
nice. Kim or Monica, anything to add about pop-ups?
Yeah, I mean, that is primarily how I do my business. You know, just randomly started doing it the last Friday and Saturday of the month. And then I was like, okay, people need consistency. Let's just keep this rolling. So that's what it's been, the last Friday and Saturday of the month, every month. So as soon as the pop-up ends, I open orders for the next month's pop-up, but I don't really promote it until it's a couple weeks out because people don't want to hear me posting about the same old pop-up for a month. So that's been good. I mean, I was like super stressed at first trying to push all these orders, you know, because if you're only doing it once a month, it's got to be big. But thankfully, you know, I have a bit of a following now. I don't know. Sometimes I'm still like, nobody's going to buy these pies. But it works out. And I process all my orders through my website. I do have a direct to consumer food license. I have a restaurant license. So I feel like I am a little more limited to what I can do with the whole just popping up outside of business with the tent. I also have time and temperature controlled food. So it's, you know, and my product is so labor intensive and so expensive that I need guaranteed sales. That's my business model, is knowing exactly how many to produce before I go into that kitchen. They do freeze really well. Eventually I'd like to expand my business model, but that's where I'm at right now. And it's been working fairly well. I couldn't imagine going somewhere with my product and being like, nobody bought any, like, what am I going to do with all these pies? You know, that would be very stressful for me. So I like the pre-sale thing. I think the pandemic really helped us all who are doing a different kind of ordering model. People were used to doing things differently. So it wasn't so outside the box to be like, order these pies a month in advance and then come to Peachtree and pick them up cold and take them home and reheat them. It wasn't such like a mind-blowing thing, given what we were all experiencing. So
Great, thank you. Monica, anything to add?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I mainly kind of deal with vegetables, and Iowa is incredibly lax when it comes to like uncut, unprocessed, fresh vegetables. Anyone can sell them from their front yard, no questions asked, no problem. You don't need a business license, you need nothing. Iowa is like, go forth, grow vegetables. Now, once I get into the baked goods, that's a little bit different, right? But as long as I stick with the cottage food laws for markets and farm stands as explained by DIA, I'm generally okay. So for the past few years, I did a farm stand pop-up here at the Garden Plot, which was really successful. I think I specifically made it a night or an afternoon to catch people on their way home from work and folks walking on their way home from school. My neighborhood has an incredibly high population. We're so lucky to have 34 languages spoken at the school down the street. And so we have a lot of people who want fresh vegetables and they want to buy them. People are used to open air markets in a lot of other places, not that aren't America. They're not used to driving to Hy-Vee 20 miles away. And so this year, a mother in the community, another woman really wanted to start a market. And so I helped her with that. That was difficult. Starting a new market is very difficult. I think in some ways, the pre-sale is a really good option. It's a balance though, like, right? If people are coming to a market, they want to have available stuff to buy. And so it's like a tightrope of, well, how much do I pre-sale, but to then have enough, but then what if no one shows up? Can I do like live sales, which is something I've done. I've done live sales on Instagram and done boxed up orders at the market. So I think if anything, trying to allow yourself to be flexible and feel out what your customers want and then follow that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. This is kind of, we've been talking about marketing and advertising today. So Elizabeth, I'll start with you, but how do you advertise and how is it, and what are your ways that you let people know about, like, say, your pop-ups or the fact that you're available at Creme? What resources or sources do you use to let people know about your business?
I do have a Google listing. I'm not very current on it. I need, I probably should go in there and update pictures and stuff like that. I do have a website so people can order cheesecakes and pies directly from that. Sugar cookies, since they're most always unique, people need to contact me personally for those. And then, like, for ads, sometimes I'll boost an ad on Facebook, but usually your organic reach is usually about the same. So why spend the money if you don't have to? Tag the business. I always tag the businesses when I drop their desserts off, like who's going to have what for this week. So it helps me and it helps them. So I'm sending people out to them. Instagram, your stories, word of mouth. Really, that's all how I've done it.
Great. Do you want to share, Kim or Monica? Either one.
Yeah, I pretty much only use social media. The Iowa Food Co-op was really nice because it was a bunch of customers that I don't think I would have really reached otherwise, at least initially. They kept telling me, like, our customers are going to want your pies. And I didn't really believe them, but so far they've been right. People want the pies. So that's been nice. And then Instagram is primarily what I use. I've done a couple like boosted ads. I go back and forth between, I spend like $10. It's not like I'm putting a lot in it, but I'm like, is this really worth it? I don't know. When I, only had a couple hundred followers, I knew that I needed a broader base of people to see my stuff in order to get more customers. So I picked 3 people that I knew wasn't necessarily good friends with, but they had a large social media following, and I gave them samples and I just asked them to tell their friends about me, their real and social media friends. And all of them just posted about me in their stories. And that got me like my biggest kind of increase in followers. And it was all kind of like-minded people already supporting small business. So that was helpful. And I do try now, like when I have a pop-up and I have some extra pies, I think like, who can I give these to? Who, you know, who would appreciate these and tell their friends about it? I'm trying to get like a subscriber list through my website and be doing like newsletters and stuff. Not that great about that, but yeah.
So I do a lot on social media. I also have a MailChimp. And so I will send out stuff to a fairly large email list. Actually just had my website redone. So I'm hoping to launch that in the next few days. I'm pretty excited. But we've also flyered, right? And so partially kind of going back to the language barrier, we asked Moulton, we asked the school down the street, what are the top 10 languages spoken at the school? And we had a flyer translated to the top 10. And so we flyered the entire neighborhood from Hickman all the way to University. To just let people know we were here and we take EBT and double up bucks and we have vegetables. And so, but I think obviously that's very specific to me, but I do think if you have a specialty, a niche, an area, figure out where those people are and try to market to them, right? Like if you're doing a vegan thing, talk to Veg Life Des Moines, talk to a shop or a business who caters to that community. You know, if you're doing, I know Kristen, I kind of missed your presentation. I'm sorry, I was dealing with children. But, you know, if you're doing fruit pies, talk with where you're getting them or a farmer, or like try to get a little bit of buzz, see if people will share your stories. Because I think once those things start to circulate and like get some traction, the more eyes that see them, the better. And not that I think this is great, but sometimes that kind of demand and like, oh my God, there's not very many, I've got to get it, kind of drumming that up on social media with a story or like limited, blah, 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 does help kind of get you that traction and that suspense and that, you know, wanting.
All right, so my next question is actually going to be to everybody, including you, Chelsea, and I'll even answer myself. How do we all deal with imposter syndrome? We've touched on it here and there. I've had personal conversations with people about feeling inadequate, that you're not qualified to be doing what you're doing, and how everyone's dealing with that. So if you're in the chat and you want to respond, go ahead, type it up. Otherwise, Elizabeth, let's start with you. And if you've ever had thoughts of imposter syndrome and how you've dealt with that. Elizabeth is on mute.
I just don't know how to work this stuff. So I first heard about imposter syndrome like yesterday on one of my cookie groups. And I do get really bad like social anxiety and like wanting people to like their stuff. And so there's some days where I'm just like cringing, but then I have to like take a step back and like, obviously I wouldn't have, you know, 7,000 followers and hundreds of customers every month if I did a horrible job. So it's just take a step back, take a deep breath, you know, you kind of have to like pep yourself up and, you know, take a break if you have to, take a couple of days off. Like usually that's when it happens to me, is when I'm stressed out and I need to take a week and just go somewhere.
That's a good idea. Kim, what about you?
I mean, looking back on it, like I am embarrassed by my first pies. Like people who ordered my first pop-up, I'm like, please order again. I promise I can do better. But I was learning, you know, and I didn't like, I'm very open with the fact that I didn't really make pies before this. And like, you know, I am self-taught. I definitely think working for Whole Foods for 15 years and learning so many skills has benefited me and made me well-rounded. I guess to answer the question, I'm very lucky that there's not a dozen other people making hand pies in Des Moines. I mean, I don't have a lot of people to compare my product to, which is really, really kind of nice. But I mean, self-doubt is something I'm very good at. So I get it. I don't know. I mean, I feel like once you've done some events that you felt were very successful and you're very proud of, it's easy to kind of take that momentum. And, you know, you're always going to have days where you're second guessing yourself and everything you're doing. And I think that's okay.
Agreed. Monica?
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to get my 3-year-old to go watch Netflix somewhere else, except for right next to me. Yeah, you. So I obviously deal with this too. I think literally, I don't think I've ever talked to someone who doesn't suffer this, especially women-bodied people, like female body. I think we all deal with it because we're socialized to deal with it. But one thing with all of us in this kind of craft of making and doing and producing things with our hands is to sometimes really just look at what you're doing, right? Did you bake this week? Then you're a baker, right? Did you do that this week? Did you do that this month? Then you're doing it. I think so many times we are minimized and we're told that it's not enough, or it has to be bigger, or it has to be better to be the thing, but it doesn't. It doesn't. You know, are people happy with what you're doing? And are you happy? You're doing it. So I have some things, like I have a couple just personally, you know, things that I'll say to kind of ground myself and remind myself. Sometimes I'll even look back at pictures, because me too, Kim, I'll look back at like 2017 and I'm like, oh my God, what was I doing? Oh no. But I think just trying to step back, and sometimes too, I think we should all take more selfies. I think we should all take more pictures of ourselves. And so sometimes, even if I don't feel up to it, like I'll take a picture of myself so I can look back and be like, yeah, I did that. I did that market, or I did that pop up, and I sold 200 loaves of bread that day. So I'm a GD baker. Even if that's sometimes minimized, or, you know, obviously I don't do the volume that Hy-Vee does, but that doesn't mean that we're not both still people who bake and who sell those baked goods, right? I obviously, you know, I don't have a 100-acre farm, but am I growing produce on a scale that I can sell almost 10,000 pounds of produce? Yeah, I do. So I am a GD farmer.
A GD farmer. All right, Chelsea, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What do you think?
Well, I will just say first that I'm a big proponent of taking care of your mental health. And so I personally go to therapy once a month, and that's been huge for me. I always say that I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I think that a lot of you can relate, like baking requires a certain level of perfectionism. And I think when you're a high achieving, ambitious person, like there's not a lot of room, I find, in my own life for error. So taking care of my mental health and having a safe place to talk about my insecurities and, you know, work through, you know, things that might be like, I've suffered from anxiety and depression before in my life. And so, you know, having a place that I can work through that. I also think finding a community where you can share your insecurities in a way that feels safe. The baking community, you know, Brene Brown always says, like, once you say shame out loud, it has no room to grow. So when I'm feeling insecure, or when I'm feeling, you know, in my head, in the imposter space, you know, I say it out loud to my partner, or I say it out, like call Monica or text her, or I talk to someone else in the call Christina, or I talk to someone else in the baking group just about, you know, how I'm feeling. And most of the time it's just, I need a sounding board to just say my insecurities out loud. And then I hear it back to myself and realize, wait a minute, okay, like reset, you know. So having that safe community that you develop for yourself, and for me, is really important. So you have a safe place to talk about those things. And, you know, when you're someone who works by yourself, there's not a lot of people to talk to. And so making sure you're putting yourself in a position where you can take care of your mental health, so that the imposter syndrome, when it does come up, you have the tools to work through it.
That's great. I got my dogs howling in the background. Sorry. I would say for me, it's a lot of what has already been said here, is kind of looking back at what you've done in the past. For me, when I'm getting in my head a little bit, I always try to think back, what was my goal of doing this? My goal was to bake what I want and have time with my family. Have I accomplished that? Yeah. So if I feel like I'm not meeting standards, or like, someone else is doing something that's so amazing, and then I just be like, okay, well, they're amazing, but I'm also amazing because I accomplished that. I was able to go for a 2-mile hike today with my dogs and my husband, and I was able to bake off these slutty brownies that I wanted to try for a super long time. And those are 2 goals that I wanted to do, and is under the umbrella of why I started baking from the home anyways. So mission accomplished. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So very similar to like what Monica was saying, I'm a GD baker because I baked something today. So for me, I think that helps a lot in trying to, when you're looking at people's businesses, if they're doing something very similar to you, to try to not compare and just try to be like, that is something they're very, very good at. And I applaud them for having that skill. It's not something that's my strong suit. I can either make it my strong suit and take the necessary steps to be stronger in that, or I can just be like, that's their thing and my thing is something else. And we're not in competition with each other. We're just more like colleagues in the same area. I say this to a lot of you have heard me say this, like, I don't think there's competition. We're just like colleagues. If everyone's making macaroons, that's just another great place to get macaroons in town. So I don't know. That's my answer.
Okay, you reminded me of something, Holly. So
Yeah.
even if every single person on this call was making and baking to their absolute maximum capacity, like as much as we could do, no one of us could feed all of Des Moines.
No.
Not one. So to think of each other as competition is silly, because if somebody loves Chelsea's bread, they were probably gonna love mine too, and they need to eat every day, and we can't. We have to work together and keep each other close and understand that there is enough business to go around. We just have to be positive and market that, and understand that it's happier, it's less stressful, and it's more uplifting to work in collaboration with people than to be competitive. And I think that shows through businesses, right? Like that shows through partnerships and collabs. And yeah, I agree. They're absolutely, collaboration is what kind of carries us through when things get a little hard or when we're feeling down. And competition is just really stressful and gross.
It's just negative. So we don't need any more negative in our life.
Okay. The other thing I'm just going to roll in real quick with that is that I actually have a value statement that I keep on my computer. So when I do get in my head, I can go back to what my values are and remind myself, sort of like what Holly said about why I'm doing what I'm doing, so that, it keeps me on track, keeps me grounded. We are closing in on the end of this, but I really, if you guys can just give I actually don't know the answer to this, and I know 2 of you pretty well, why your business is named for what it is, just real quick, and then we can roll into Holly's last question. So I'd love to, let's start with Kim. Tell me why Domestic Bones is called Domestic Bones.
Yeah, I knew my business name before I knew my business. I just feel like there's this negative connotation with the word domestic. Google it and everything comes up like domestic violence. And I'm like, oh God, I'm the only business who would start their name with domestic. But for me, like embracing those kind of old school values of being home, cooking for your family, making good quality comfort food, like embracing that side of life. I think that it's like a generational thing, of course. And I think like we've gotten so far away from it and now it's like coming back. But just kind of celebrating the domestic side of life to my bones.
Elizabeth, you want to share?
I am Chacha's Confections because my nickname has been Chacha since I was probably 6 months old. And confections is anything made with sugar. So it made sense to use confections instead of just like cupcake or cakes, because obviously my business has been shifting the entire time I've had it. So instead of just sticking with one word, Chacha's Confections. People know me as Chacha. That's all I go by. And confections is sugar. So that's what it is. Oh, and can I get a GD Baker shirt? Can we get those made?
Yeah, I would like that very much, or some aprons or something.
Yes.
Kim, you can sew us all some GD Baker aprons.
I'd buy it. So it kind of, a Sweet Tooth Farm just arose from, there are so many options where I live to buy processed, gross, not always. I like a good honey bun here and again too. Okay, Nutty Bar, hello, Lil Debbie, I'm with it. But we thought it was just a fun pull, a fun way to look at it. We've got a Family Dollar, QT, and a liquor store. And recently, in the past 5 years, we've had Sea Fresh open up. But to have a place that is kind of like, the name's kind of fun. It's kind of like, what? Sweet Tooth? What is that? We just thought it was a fun name. And we also thought it was cute when we were first starting out. A lot of the kids, I mean, to preface, right? If you've never had a garden, if you've never had access to fresh vegetables or growing things, of course you wouldn't know. Why would you? And so a lot of the kids like didn't know that tomatoes could be like orange, or didn't know that pickles start out as cucumbers. And so, yeah, just that things from the earth that aren't cooked or processed or baked can be sweet and delicious too. It's kind of just a play on that. But yeah.
Okay, great. We actually had a question come in on the chat. What advice do you guys have on finding enough customers in rural community? There aren't many people with baking businesses here. People here bake themselves and won't pay for my stuff unless it's exceptional or different. I constantly feel pressured into trying to be the best. Any advice would be appreciated. So let's just go on down the line. Elizabeth, any advice?
I guess I would find something that is unique to the area, maybe, and do the FOMO thing. I mean, you want people to think they're missing out on something great, which it probably is great. And do a pop-up. I mean, you don't have to be there. Just set your goods out. Let people know when it will be. And I mean, all you can do is try. Failure is part of trying.
Yeah, good.
And succeeding.
Karen, what do you bake right now? Drop it in the chat. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I bake pies.
Pies, okay.
And we have a lot of older people around here in my community that grew up baking pies and
Sure.
have mothers and grandmothers that bake pies. And
Can I jump in here as a fellow pie maker? I think because we definitely run into that sometimes at farmers market, having folks from outside Des Moines and like rural communities or older people come who we get questions about prices and like pushback. I know one thing for us has been doing like pie slices has been huge because it's a way lower price point for
Sure.
people to buy your stuff. I realize that like might not help you move as much product like right away. But it might really be a way to like build buzz that's sustainable
Sure.
for you. And maybe think about like if there are community events that you could be at, just to get like more foot traffic than normal. Because I know that I grew up in a small town and we had a very, very tiny farmers market. But I know that not all towns have that either. So, but I know like a lot of local bakers like really did try to, if there was some sort of community event or a church event or something like that in the community, just thinking about that. But yeah, I also would suggest like people will pay $5 for a slice of pie. In my experience, without thinking about it, it's $5. It's easy. And I mean, at least for us, like we slice our pies into 8 pieces, like that's $40 on a pie, which I
Sure.
can't charge for a full pie, but I can sell $5 slices more easily. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that does help.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other thing, Karen, I thought of is I don't know where you're at or what the like restaurant scene is, but kind of like what Kim had said, maybe getting to know some of the restaurants and or, you know, even a grocer, a smaller grocer, giving them some samples and seeing if that would be an option.
Okay. I was baking pies for a local bakery, well, about 20 miles down the road, but she was only paying me $10 a pie. And I couldn't even make it that way. I mean, and then I had to get it into her bakery. So I said no. I said no more of this. So,
That's rough.
yeah. And
You also, even with like Kim, I mean, you might see if there's like a local brewery or like winery or cidery or something like that, places that don't already have a lot of food. So you wouldn't be
oh, that's an
competition.
idea. Yeah.
But that would be a really unique, thing for them to
Yeah.
offer and maybe a way for you to sell more. I'll be quiet.
Josh, do you want to talk about selling slices at Creme? Because that's worked better than the whole pieces for us too.
Yeah, I originally started trying to do whole pies, and they only sell, well, whole pies go faster during holidays. But if you do slices, and especially like rhubarb custard, like traditional old school ones, people just love it. And they want to get a slice of lemon meringue, they want a slice of rhubarb, and they want a slice of this, rather than having to buy 3 whole pies, which would be, $75, $90.
Right.
They just spent 15 and they are happier.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard.
We
Live in a very small community and we don't have, there are farmers markets around, but I have to travel quite a ways to get to any of them, and that makes it difficult for me, but I may have to look that route more so than staying around home here. So
Thank you for sharing that with us, Karen. We have 3 minutes left to tell us about what's next for you and your business.
For me, I would like to expand my cookie business, more so than anything else. And with that comes an edible printer, which is $4,500. But once again, I'm not very good with technology, so I'm gonna have to learn before I do that. So that's about it for me.
Phase 2 of my business is to make kitchen aprons. So I'm hoping to get on that this fall. And then I think like in the next year, I'd at least like to think or make moves to get a little mobile food unit. I don't really want a food truck, but like a hand pie cart. Come on, roll around town, do some fun events with it. Yeah, I don't want to go large scale quite yet. So I'm just trying to enjoy it, have fun. Yes.
I love it. Well, if there's any other questions, we've got, Kristen says to tell us all when you're selling aprons, Kim.
Yes, no.
There's 30 seconds left for a question. So if anybody wants to jump on and ask, you can jump in the chat. This has been a great discussion. I've learned a ton, even in the last hour. So it's very inspirational. Does anyone have any last questions?
Awesome. I'll just wrap up really quickly. So we will have each little section edited down so you can kind of take it in bite size as the recordings come. So if you can give us about a week, we've got last week, and then we'll process all the ones from today as well. And then we will actually get those up on our website. They're run through YouTube. So you can send those out, or if you need them for, again, like speaking, that been a speaker at things, you'll have that to include. I'll send up another follow-up email today, just like I did last week. And again, if you want a swag bag, just shoot your email back to me. I didn't want to put a public document out there with everybody's addresses on it. So just shoot me an email back. We're going to be mailing those out this week. And I'll also send the link to upcoming events. So we have a lot of stuff coming up, and we'd love to keep seeing your faces. A lot of our stuff is offered virtual and or recorded. Everything I do small business wise is recorded and then put up on our website. So As you go forward, I kind of mentioned mentors. If I can ever help any of you continue to grow your business, or you need help, or you just want to shoot me a question, I'm always here for you, as well as Holly and Chelsea. Thanks for co-hosting their amazing vision and helping pull all this together. Thank you to all our speakers that were on. I know that takes time out of your day. Thank you for jumping in and being part of this to continue to grow the industry. And if anyone ever needs help, I threw in there, like, this industry is unique, that if anything goes wrong, you can always reach out to, I don't want to call them competitors either, because I think of it as our family. Always willing to jump in and help out as needed. Emergencies, supplies, things run out, advice. The industry is here for you.